Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm reporter Morgan Brown, and we have the breaking news on sensation and perception. We're going to go to our first expert, Sarah Whitman. Here we go. So, Sarah, please tell me, what is sensation exactly?
Well, sensation is the process by which our sensory receptors and nervous system receive and represent stimulus energies from our environment.
Ah, fascinating. So now can you describe the bottom-up processing for me, please?
Well, that begins with the sensory receptors and works up to the brain's integration of sensory information.
Okay. Now that you described the bottom-up processing, now can you describe for me the top-down processing?
Well, this process is just the opposite. It starts by being guided by higher level mental processes, as when we construct perceptions drawing on our experience and expectations.
Sarah, we've been hearing so much about this selective attention. Please explain what this is to the viewers and I, please.
Well, this is the focusing of conscious awareness on a particular stimulus, like choosing what you want to hear.
Do you hear that, folks? Do you hear that from Sarah Whitman herself? All right. We are about to demonstrate for you inattentional blindness. But before I do not try this at home, kids. Folks, I just hit something, and this is what happens when you don't concentrate. Safety first. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to demonstrate for you change blindness, which is failing to notice changes in the environment. We're back inside in the cool temperatures with Sarah Whitman, who's about to describe for us psychophysics and absolute threshold. Here we go.
Psychophysics is a study of relationships between the physical characteristics of stimuli, such as their intensity, and our psychological experience of them.
Now, Sarah, can you describe what absolute threshold is?
Well, that is the minimum stimulation needed to detect a particular stimulus 50% of the time.
So, I heard about this signal detection theory, and is it true that it's a theory predicting how and when we detect the presence of a faint stimulus amid background stimulation?
Why, yes, it is.
So, I just found out, folks, that subliminal is below one's absolute threshold for conscious awareness. Did you know that, folks? Did you know that? So now, Sarah, now that we're back, please explain priming.
Priming is the activation, often unconsciously, of certain associations, thus predisposing one's perception, memory, or response.
Sarah, ladies and gentlemen, is about to describe for us different thresholds. Here we go.
This is the minimum difference between two stimuli required for detection 50% of the time.
I just found out, folks, that Weber's law is the principle that, to be perceived as different, two stimuli must differ by a constant percentage rather than a constant amount. Did you know that? Did you know that? Preposterous! Now, Sarah, please describe to the folks and I what sensory adaptation is.
Well, since you're wondering, it's diminished sensitivity as a consequence of constant stimulation.
Now, Sarah is going to describe to you folks transduction, wavelength, hue, and intensity. Take it away, Sarah.
In sensation, transduction is the transforming of stimulus energies such as sights, sounds, smells into neural impulses our brains can interpret. Wavelength is the distance from the peak of one light or sound wave to the peak of the next. Hue is the dimension of color that is determined by the wavelength of light. Intensity is determined by a wave's amplitude. It is the amount of energy in a light or sound wave, which we perceive as brightness or loudness.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you're following me inside here where we have our expert, Sarah Whitman, and she's going to describe the eye to you guys. Here we go. Tell us, Sarah, about the eye.
The pupil is the adjustable opening in the center of the eye through which light enters. The iris is the colored portion around the pupil and controls the size of the pupil opening.
Fascinating.
The lens changes shape and helps focus images on the retina. The retina is the light-sensitive inner surface of the eye that begins the processing of visual information.
Now, Sarah, what can you tell us about accommodation?
Well, accommodation is the process by which the eye's lens changes shape to focus near or far objects on the lens. The rods are retinal receptors that detect black, white, or gray colors. Cones are retinal receptor cells that are concentrated near the center of the retina that function in daylight or well-lit conditions.
Wow, I'm sure you folks did not really know that. Did you now?
No, you didn't. The optic nerve is the nerve that carries neural impulses from the eye to the brain.
All right, Sarah, I heard about this blind spot thing. Can you just please explain that to me?
Well, the blind spot is the point at which the optic nerve leaves the eye, creating a blind spot because no receptor cells are located there.
Wow, I did not know that, but now I know.
If you didn't know, the fovea is the central local point in the retina around which the eye's cones cluster.
All right, folks, in our last few minutes here, we're going to talk about perception with our expert, Sarah Whitman. Here we go. Take it away, Sarah.
Well, perception is the process of organizing and interpreting sensory information, enabling us to recognize meaningful objects and events. In grouping, the perceptual tendency to organize stimuli into coherent groups. In depth perception, we have the ability to see objects in 3 dimensions, although the images that strike the retina are 2-dimensional. In Visual Cliff, a laboratory device for testing depth perception in infants and young animals.
So, Sarah, what can you tell us about monocular cues and binocular cues?
Well, in monocular cues, depth cues such as interposition and linear perspective available to either eye alone. Binocular cues are depth cues such as retinal disparity that depend on the use of 2 eyes.
Now, Sarah, can you please explain retinal disparity to the folks in eye?
Well, retinal disparity is a binocular cue for perceiving depth by comparing images from the retinas in the two eyes. The brain computes distance. Perceptual adaptation is the ability to adjust to an artificially displaced or even inverted visual field. Perceptual set is a mental predisposition to perceive one thing and not another.
Sarah, what is figure ground?
This is the organization of the visual field into objects that stand out from their surroundings.
One last question before we go. What is Gestalt laws?
These laws are an organized whole, emphasized our tendency to integrate piece of information into meaningful wholes.
That's all for today, folks. I'm Morgan Brown, your reporter, and you just met our expert, Sarah Whitman. Good night.
Well, this process... Okay, sorry.
What is wrong with our expert, Sarah Whitman? We don't know. Please describe top-down processing.
I can't.
Why not?
I don't know. I can't read it. Tell me how to read. Oh my god. Okay.
I've been recording the entire time.
No, you didn't go over it.
What did I hit?
Nothing.
What did I hit? What did I hit? Stimulus. So, Sarah, we heard about priming.
The big bird just dunked it.
These birds are ruining our shots. Bird.